Hello. What we're going to cover today is leadership of culture, ethics, and diversity. This is for a guest lecture at the Bahamas Technical and Vocational Institute, Human Resource Management 2205, Organizational Leadership. And the guest lecturer is Jermaine Tucker, Doctor of Education, me. And we're going to focus on a lot of learning outcomes, but we're going to condense these learning outcomes from possibly 10 to maybe one. And the one that we will focus on, keeping in line with Bloom's taxonomy, that our learners will be able to explain the culture to the power of culture to an organization's effectiveness both internally and externally. And with that being the case, it brings us to this idea about what is Bahamian culture? How do you know? Is it the same as 10 years ago? Where can you find it? And it brings me to this story of my family and I literally were just watching Chunkanu and the Atiatian and Santo Nino festivals, which are in the Bahamas and the Philippines, respectively. And you could see a lot of similarities between the festivals, but then there were some stark differences that you start to wonder about. And this is why you can pose the question to uh, audiences about what exactly is Bahamian culture. Or if you don't want to just say Bahamian culture, what is culture? And how do we know that it is actually culture? So that means it's not going to be the same in the USA. It's not going to be the same in Vietnam. It's not going to be the same in Cambodia. It's not going to be the same in Zimbabwe or Tanzania or Eritrea. So exactly what makes that culture its culture? Is it its people? And if it is its people, then if we know that these people are who are going to hold that culture, then it gives us this idea of what happens when we put them in an organizational setting. And if we put them in this organizational setting, and we know organizations have their own sets of goals that they would like to obtain, then it poses the question of what is organizational culture. So we know culture is the aggregate of beliefs, norms, attitudes, values, assumptions, and ways of doing things that is shared by members of an organization and taught to new members. So those beliefs, those morals, those customs and practices make up the cultural DNA that gives organizations and individuals their identities. And this is coming from Lucier and Achua's 2016 book that's titled Leadership Theory, Application, and Skill Development, the sixth edition. And since we know this to be an aspect of what is organizational culture, then that means these beliefs, these morals, these customs, practices that makes up this culture, or it gives this organization or the members of that organization their identities, then there has to be some form of creation. And if there's going to be a form of creation, especially as it pertains to culture, it has to be either sustained or it's going to be dropped. And when we now put this into an organizational setting, usually this culture creation stems from top management. They're usually the ones that are going to be highlighted in this role. And their effectiveness in influencing follower behavior is in part attributed to that organization culture. So whether it's created by intentional design, meaning that the person may come in and notice that they want the organization to be a bit more uh, ecologically aware, meaning that they want to bring in more sustainable practices, and they realize that okay, let's quickly embed this into the organization and see what happens. Or this culture can come from the experiences of the people, whether that means the floor is swept a particular way, whether that means that there's a particular process to handling documents. All of these experiences help to shape that culture, or at least make the culture as unique as possible. And if that organizational culture can be imposed on by the new leader's intention to change or adapt a culture to align with the visions, the values, the objectives, and the strategies of said organization, the challenge then comes into how quickly and how smoothly can we incorporate these new behaviors into the cultural orientation or cultural retooling. So, what exactly is this cultural orientation and retooling? Usually, these unfolds through whether it's conflict, ambivalence, authenticity, or where you could have a retooling outcomes of regression, meaning that my goal to be more sustainable or have more sustainable practices in an organization may lead to persons regressing, or they may be just stagnant, meaning that at the end of the day, the outcome was there was no change or there was some form of transformation, meaning that now the organization is moving along to being more sustainable in their practices. And from there, you could have the formative check about let's reflect on our organization. Can we identify aspects to our culture? What makes us us? Whether that means we're in the public affairs section, whether that means we're in the poll section, whether that means we're in the Foreign Service Institute, what exactly makes us us? And has anyone came in and tried to make changes to the culture? And who was this person? And then how was it received? And when we do these formative assessment checks, it's very easy to at least come back to the same learning outcome of explaining that power of the culture to the organization's effectiveness both internally and externally, meaning how was this affected us as people within our organization, and then how is this now affected whether it be the stakeholders or just plainly the organization at large. And with that being said, it I think we are done. So I thank you for your time.